Hey y'all, I'm CQ and this is Spirit Gumbo, the podcast where we stir the spiritual pot with truth, spice, and sass. In today's episode, we're diving into roots and remembrance, the ancestral cycles that hold us back and the sacred gifts that carry us forward. We'll start with a gumbo bite on why healing isn't just about cutting ties, but also about remembering the roots that still nourish us. Then I'll take you into a story time with CQ, 5 generations of women, their strength, their silence, and how their survival shaped me and my daughters. From there, we'll break it down in the main theme, the roots that hold, the roots that heal, naming both the trauma and the gifts, and learning how to work with both. And of course, Spirit will close us out in the Tarot Truth Bomb with a word you won't want to miss. So grab your candle, sip your tea, and let's get into it. This ain't just talk. This is Spirit Gumbo with CQ. Alright, now here's your gumbo bite for today. Something short and spicy to stir into your soul. The roots that nourish. Everybody talks about breaking generational curses and traumas. And yes, that work is so important. But here's the thing. Not everything our ancestors handed down is steeped in pain. Some of it was power. Some of it was wisdom. Some of it was love. Don't spend so much time running from the past that you forget to claim the gifts that were meant for you. Healing isn't just about cutting ties and letting go. Sometimes it's about remembering the roots that still nourish you. Now, take that with you and stir wisely. It's now time for Storytime with CQ, Borne in the Blood. Today, I want to tell the story of 5 generations of women in my family. The women in my family were expected to give their time, their bodies, their silence, their dreams. Somewhere along the way, that sacrifice became the definition of love, but I'm learning that love doesn't require self-abandonment, and maybe my freedom is their healing. I often wish I knew more about my ancestors. I've always been the one who loves to dig into where we came from, to trace the line and listen for stories. I'm a storyteller by nature, and I've carried that since I was a child. I long to know more of the voices that came before me, but even with what I do know, I carry enough to share some of our story. Some of it is beautiful, some of it is heartbreaking, but it's ours. Before I begin, I want to explain the names you'll hear. We called my great-grandmother Granny. My grandmother was Mama. And of course, my mother is simply Mom. That way, as I tell this story, you'll know exactly who I'm speaking about. Of course, all of these women are on my maternal line. And before I step into the story itself, I want to share a short concept that will help you hear it the way I do. It's called the 7-generation principle. This is an indigenous teaching common across many North American nations that asks us to consider how our choices ripple 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. It asks us to hold time in a bigger way, to think beyond today and care for those who came before and those who will come after. I say this with respect and gratitude for the people who carried this wisdom. What we heal heals forwards and backwards. There's another idea I want you to hold with me. We are carried by our grandmother's teaching. That's part metaphor and part biology. Biologically, a female carries the eggs she will ever have while she is a fetus in her mother's womb. So when my great-grandmother carried my grandmother, The potential for my mother was already there. When my grandmother carried my mother, I was already there. In a very literal sense, we are nested inside each other. Beyond the cells, there's DNA and what some call blood memory, energetic and familiar knowing that moves through the line. So this episode sits in the space between biology and spirit. It's about the burdens that were handed down and the sacred strengths too. Keep that with you. What we heal does not stop with us. It moves in both directions. All right, with that grounding, here's our story. Born in the blood. My granny was born in the early 1900s. She had 7 brothers and sisters, and when she was 21, she married my great-grandfather. In those days, women did what their husbands told them to do, and from all accounts, her husband was an alcoholic and abusive, not only to her, but later to his grandchildren as well. I won't go into details other than to say this: the man wasn't a good person. When he passed away, Granny made a vow. She said she would never let another man cross the threshold of her home, and she meant it. She didn't even let the insurance agent come in to collect money because he was a man. What I remember most about Granny, though, wasn't her suffering. It was her strength, her faith, and her love. She always wore her saint medals pinned to her petticoats. She had so many that when she went in for medical tests, they'd have trouble finding all of them. And she never cursed. Even when she was upset, she never said a bad word. The strongest thing you'd hear from her was, "You dirty bum." I remember watching her wash her long hair, letting it dry in the sun before braiding it and wrapping it in a bun on top of her head. Her hair was so long, and she could grow anything. Her house was always filled with plants, roses climbing across the front yard, greenery in every corner. Sometimes she would watch me after school, and in those moments, what I remember most was her gentleness. Her house carried the memory of pain, yes, but her presence was love. Granny lived a long life, filled with both hardship and love. She passed away when I was still young, but her presence lingered in her plants, in her prayers, and in the stories we carried of her. Even now, when I think of her, I don't only remember the pain she endured. I remember her gentleness, her quiet strength, and the way she always had her hands in the dishpan, forever washing dishes. My mama was born in the late 1920s. I know a little more about her early life than I do about my granny. When she was a young woman, she had every intention of becoming a nun. Like her mother, she had a very strong faith. Right before she was to take her vows, her mother superior encouraged her to take some time to experience the world and life. During that time, she got a job as a telephone operator, and it was during that break that she met my grandfather. They eventually married and went on to have 9 children. My grandfather was a carpenter by trade, and because of his work, they moved around a lot. But when they finally settled in one place, my mama put her foot down. She said she would never leave that property again unless it was in a pine box. Her first set of children were twins, and one of them was mentally disabled and had epilepsy. He passed away before I turned 1. My grandfather left my mama more than once during their marriage, and when he did, he never sent money home to help her. So she raised 9 children, including a handicapped son for the most part on her own. What I remember most about her is her faith. She clung to it and lived it fully. I've heard stories about their marriage that I won't go into, but what I will say is this: my mama showed more strength and grace than many could have in her position. Later in life, when my grandfather returned home sick, she could have sent him away. She could have punished him for the years of absence and neglect, but she didn't. She welcomed him back into her home, and she cared for him until he passed. I could go on and on about my grandmother. She helped my mom raise me. Her faith was her backbone. She was a lay Carmelite. She went to the jail to pray with the inmates. And if she told you she was going to say a rosary for you, you could count on it. My mama passed away not too long ago, but her legacy of faith, grace, and quiet strength lives on in me, my daughters, and everyone who loved her. My mom was born in the 1950s in the month of October. My mama always said she was a treat, not a trick, because she came into the world so close to Halloween. Unfortunately, my mom, along with several of her cousins, was abused by their grandfather. She wasn't able to begin addressing her trauma until she was in her early 40s. So much pain, carried silently for so long. By the time she was 20, she was unmarried and pregnant with me. Later, she married my stepfather, but unfortunately, he was abusive. That marriage ended when I was 6 years old. Even through her own struggles, my mom was the one who stepped up to support her younger brothers as they finished school. She helped financially support the family, and she was the one who went with my mama to make the funeral arrangements for her brother when she was just 21 years old. While I was growing up, my mom worked a lot. There were things I didn't get to do because she was always working. Her and I have spoken about that recently, about how I sometimes felt unsupported as a child. And she was honest with me. She hadn't felt supported either. That pattern of being left to carry it all runs deep in our family. But my mom is also a giving, beautiful woman. Hard sometimes, yes. In charge sometimes, yes. But giving to the core. Even now, she continues to take care of others. She's currently caring for her oldest brother, the same way she has cared for so many people in her life. And it's funny, because my mom always says when she grows up, she wants to be just like my mama, but she already is. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have been able to take care of my first husband while also raising my children in a stable home. And like the women before her faith is what keeps her going. It's been shaken at times, but her faith always brings her through. I was born into a line of strong, faithful women, but also into a line marked by trauma, silence, and obligation. From the beginning, I carried both. My childhood was complicated. My biological father was not only absent, he denied I was even his. My stepfather was abusive, and that shaped so much of how I saw myself in the world. I grew up fast, I grew up cautious, and like the women before me, I learned early what it meant to survive. But I also carried something else. From the time I was young, I heard stories differently. I felt spirit close. I noticed things others overlooked. My voice and my vision didn't always fit the world I was living in. But now I see those were the gifts that came down my bloodline too. The pattern I've seen most clearly in my family is obligation. Always the strong one. Always the one who sacrifices, who works, who carries it all. My granny, my mama, my mom, each of them lived it, and I lived it too. I carried responsibility that was bigger than me because that's just what was expected. Later, when I became a caregiver for my first husband, I found myself repeating that same pattern. I poured everything I had into keeping someone else alive even when it was breaking me. But Spirit has a way of stirring the pot. What I thought was only duty eventually became my breaking point and my awakening. Somewhere along the way, I realized my healing wasn't just for me. It was for my daughters. It was for my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, for every woman who carried pain in silence. Today, I claim a different truth. Love doesn't require self-abandonment. My freedom is their healing, and it's being passed down to my daughters. My oldest recently graduated college, the first in 3 generations. She's independent, strong, and unafraid to voice her opinions in the face of opposition. My youngest has followed her heart across an ocean. She carries the quiet strength of her great-grandmother. 5 generations of women, from Granny to my daughters. I carry my Granny, my mama, and my mom inside me, not just their wounds, but their wisdom. And I know the freedom I claim today doesn't stop with me. It moves backwards and forwards through blood and spirit, born in the blood. It's now time for our main theme, the roots that hold, the roots that heal. So let's talk about breaking cycles. In my family, there is so much ancestral trauma, abuse, addiction, alcoholism, even sickness, and obligation trauma. I know it sounds like a lot, and it is, but here's the thing. Every family has its patterns. Yours might look different than mine, but we all carry both the burdens and the blessings of those who came before us. By slowly breaking these cycles and embracing the gifts, we as a family are working towards healing. Is it easy? No. Can one person break all these traumas? Again, no. But I recognize that as each generation begins, they continue the spiral of healing. Breaking cycles matters. But if that's all we do, we risk forgetting the sacred gifts our ancestors handed us. Healing means holding both, the roots that bound us and the roots that nourish us. So, as you listen today, I want you to ask yourself, what patterns have I been carrying that are ready to end? And what gifts have I forgotten to honor? Roots that hold, roots that heal, roots that hold. Let's be honest, some cycles like silence, obligation, survival, addiction, and abuse are easy to spot. However, there are so many roots that hold that it would take too much time to name them all. So here are a few just to get you thinking. Abandonment, poverty, lack of support, struggles with worthiness, jealousy, anger, even patterns of unhealthy relationships. Some of these are obvious, but others can be sneaky. They show up in how we talk to ourselves, how we show up for others, or how we shrink back when life asks us to take up more space. These roots can feel heavy, but here's the important part. Once we name them, we can start loosening their grip. They will continue to repeat generation after generation until someone chooses to face them. What stays unspoken stays unhealed. But what we bring into the light, we can begin to shift. Roots that heal. Generational faith, resilience, strength, intuition, wisdom, and creativity can create anchors that hold things steady when the storms of life arrive, as long as they're not used in a toxic way. Take strength, for example. It's a beautiful inheritance, but even strength can become harmful if it turns into silence or self-abandonment. True strength means knowing when to ask for help. Faith can sustain us, but if it turns into denial or spiritual bypassing, it can keep us from healing. Intuition is a gift, but if it's ignored or mocked, it gets buried instead of blossoming. The point is, every gift has a healthy expression and a shadow side. These roots that heal are just as real and powerful as the traumas, and when we claim them with awareness, they become medicine for us and for the generations to come. So, how do we actually work with both the roots that hold and the roots that heal? The first step is awareness. Start by recognizing the patterns in your own line, the ones you've already lived and the ones you've watched play out in your family. Where do you see the patterns of trauma repeating? And just as importantly, where do you see strength? Naming both sides matters. The second step is discernment. Not everything from our ancestors is ours to carry forward. This is where we learn what to release and what to reclaim. Release doesn't always mean you'll never struggle with it again. It means you're choosing not to keep it as your identity. Reclaiming is about saying, "This gift is mine, and I will honor it in a healthy way." And finally, there's practice. Because awareness without action doesn't shift much. Here's one way to begin. Take a moment to journal on this question. What trait, strength, or gift runs in my family that I can honor as sacred? Then, if you're drawn to ritual, create a small altar or sacred space. Place one black candle to represent ancestral pain, something you're choosing to release, and place one red candle to represent ancestral strength, something you're choosing to carry forward. Light your candles, sit before your altar, and speak these words. I see the pain, but I also see the gifts. I release what is not mine to carry, and I honor what nourishes me. This is how we hold both the roots that bind and the roots that heal. I know this isn't just theory because I've lived it. I've carried trauma, yes, the silence, the abuse, the obligation, but I've also carried intuition, storytelling, faith, and strength. Those gifts are just as real as the wounds. And once I started claiming them, really claiming them, things shifted. My healing stopped being only about me. It became about my daughters too. It became about breaking the cycles in my family. I remind my daughters all the time, do your work now. Don't wait until your 40s or 50s like I had to. If you do the work now, it's freedom. The stories I tell, the way I honor spirit, the strength I embody, the faith I hold on to, those are the gifts I've chosen to reclaim from my line. And because of that choice, my daughters get to inherit something different. They're not just carrying pain, they're carrying possibility. This is where the 7 generations teaching comes alive for me. Because what we heal doesn't stop with us. It moves backwards and forwards. And what we honor, what we reclaim, what we remember, it nourishes both those who came before us and those who will come after. That's how we break cycles. That's how we honor gifts. That's how we become good ancestors. And let me tell you, I can't wait to show up as a wise ancestor, dancing, laughing, maybe even saying a few curse words, entering with all the power and strength of those who walked with me, telling future generations, we've got this. It's time for a tarot truth bomb, where spirit speaks through the cards and I don't sugarcoat the message. Today's pull is all about legacy and inheritance. The cycles we're breaking, the gifts we're reclaiming, and what we're passing forward. As I shuffle, I want you to take a deep breath and ask yourself, what am I carrying that doesn't belong to me? What gift is waiting in my bloodline that I've been too busy surviving to claim? What do I want my children or the generations after me to inherit from me? All right, let's see what card we have. Just feeling to shuffle just for another second. And the card we have is the King of Wands, which is really interesting. So, wands are all about creativity, fire energy. Fire energy I like to describe is fire energy burns away the things that no longer serve us to make room for the things that do serve us. King energy, the kings for me, because it's male, it's masculine, it's about external, what we're showing on the outside, and action that's being taken on the outside, as opposed to the feminine of the queens, which is internal. So with the King of Wands, I like to describe his energy as the energy that Freddie Mercury from Queen had on stage when he was performing. He had so much passion, and you could feel the music when he would sing when he was on stage. So since we're talking about claiming things for future generations, it is time to reclaim that passion, that fire, that energy that burns away things that are no longer serving us. It is time to tap into our own creativity, the things that light us up, and embrace them and move them forward through the line. How incredible to be given the King of Wands. That energy is so moving. And again, it's passionate, it's creativity, it's all of those things. That has been our Tarot Truth Bomb for today. Spirit said what it said. Spirit didn't stutter. Take it in, sit with it, and do what you will with it. As we close today, I want you to remember this. You are not only the product of your ancestors' pain, you are also the living proof of their prayers. Yes, you carry cycles that need breaking, but you also carry wisdom, strength, and gifts that are yours to reclaim. You are both a reflection of the pain and the prayers. Just like the yin-yang symbol, there is light in the darkness and darkness in the light. You, me, all of us, we are a reflection of that balance. So, I leave you with this reflection. What inheritance do I want to release? And what inheritance do I want to pass forward? Because healing isn't just for you. It moves backwards and forwards, through blood, through spirit, through you. That's it for today's brew. If something stirred your soul, pass it on. And don't forget to follow, rate, and share your thoughts on any of our socials. Next week, in episode 7, Magic Cycles, Healing and Sacred Pauses, we're talking about what happens when healing calls and spirit gets quiet. I'll be sharing about the sacred rhythm of inner work, the importance of rest, and how those silent, intuitive slowdowns aren't punishment, they're preparation. Until next time, this ain't just talk. This is Spirit Gumbo with CQ.